We are live. Excuse me. Can't start over again. Anyway, we are live on Proline TV for our coverage of the NFL, the offseason in 2025, and an opportunity for us to talk about as many teams as we can, post-draft, post-free agency. Of course, we've got mini camps and rookie camps coming up. There's still some signings going on that will go on before the regular season begins, of course. Most of them have pretty much been done. But this is our opportunity today to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so Alex Kozora from SteelersDepot.com gets the chance to talk to us today, which we're real happy about. How's it going, Alex?
Hey, Greg, doing well. Appreciate you having me on.
It's great to talk Pittsburgh Steelers. And a very prideful program that has won many Super Bowls. And they've had all these winning seasons. And everybody's wondering whether or not that's starting to slip away. Will that finally come to an end? But this particular draft class, to me, looked pretty impressive. And we're going to get into that in a little bit, Alex. But first of all, a couple of dealings with the roster still going on. And the biggest one, really, I think that's impacting all of the NFL is just one more to go as far as a big name. And where is that big name landing? And that's Aaron Rodgers. Is this a foregone conclusion? Is this just a matter of just waiting until a certain date and time that Aaron Rodgers will be a Pittsburgh Steeler?
I wouldn't say that. That's probably too aggressive to say foregone conclusion. I know we're live, but every time I mention Aaron Rodgers, I feel like I have to hold up a newspaper that says this is as of May 16th, and so anything could change. We are truly waiting on Aaron Rodgers' time and have since March, essentially. The expectation and my personal belief, whatever that's worth, is that Rodgers will eventually sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. When that'll be is a really interesting question. And Greg, I think, to me, there should start to at least be some pressure from the team exerted on Rodgers. OTAs for Pittsburgh begins May 27th. I know they're voluntary, but most of the roster will be there. Mandatory minicamp begins in the middle of June, I believe June 10th. And so, to me, those are critical dates for a quarterback. If you want to come in, be the face of the franchise, learn the offense, get chemistry with your teammates. Those are really important building blocks in the spring. I know Rodgers has not been crazy about OTAs, but he's no longer the 11th year player in Green Bay where it's old hat. This is all new. And I think it's unfair to the players if they're working, if they have to answer questions about who's the quarterback, is Rodgers coming, which they don't have answers to. And for Rodgers to sit at home and just get to think it over more, I think there's got to be a deadline for him at some point, and that point, I think, is approaching. Will Pittsburgh actually set the deadline? Maybe not, because they have put themselves in a position where it's Rodgers or bust. He is the best option out there, and if he's not coming, they're in even deeper trouble. So maybe they can't do that, but for me, the deadline should be approaching.
Okay. What about is there a reason why a specific, like you pointed out, a date for a reason, but contractually, is there anything stopping him from signing now, or that he needs to sign by a certain date, or he can't walk into the building until when, or no, everything is clean. And if he wants to come and if the Steelers want him and they agree, he could step into the hallway of the Pittsburgh Steelers facility today?
As far as I know, it's the latter. There was nothing contractually holding up. I mean, the report is Pittsburgh had an offer on the table for Rodgers the first week of free agency, which was mid-March. And he talked about in his lone interview he did with the Pat McAfee show that money was not the issue. He said he would play for 10 M's. I'm curious if he actually will play for 10 M's should he sign with Pittsburgh. I don't think he will, but that does not appear to be the issue. I will take him at his word when he says his reason for waiting was his personal life, his personal relationships, his friendships, and wanting to think about his future. And I can understand and give grace to a guy that this is his first time as a free agent, 41 years old, never been a free agent before. And so it's a big decision. And on top of that, it is, do I want to play again? Do I want to make that commitment? And am I ready to put my mind and body into that? But the longer this thing goes along, the more offseason activities he misses, be it OTAs and minicamp, you wonder, is he fully committed? And is that fair to the players? And so we shall see. But again, I think Pittsburgh's in a position where they don't have any other alternative they like. They like Mason Rudolph, but is he going to get them to a playoff win? Probably not. And so Rodgers is the guy. They've waited this long, and they will continue to wait.
Yeah, it's a good time to take a look at the ourlads.com Pittsburgh Steeler depth chart. And of course, you look at that quarterback situation, and there it is. And it's just waiting for somebody to fill that spot where Mason Rudolph currently resides. So we'll see if that happens or not. I think most people would be surprised if Aaron Rodgers was not the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But hey, I think that really depends on if Aaron Rodgers does want to play. I think that's all it's about. I don't think there's any way Aaron Rodgers is going to decide to play. Nah, I'd rather have a losing season with the New Orleans Saints and just end my career, these last several years with the Jets and the Saints, without even attempting to make a playoff run or anything like that. And where I could give myself one really good shot, maybe two, but one really good shot with a well-coached team that always makes the playoffs, or at least is always at least over 500 based on Mike Tomlin's run. So we'll see if that happens. But I think this is also a good opportunity for us to take a look here at the depth chart at that wide receiver spot, because DK Metcalf is all of a sudden now the number one wideout for the Steelers, no longer George Pickens. And when we spoke a couple of months ago, before the offseason opened up with free agency and the draft and all that, you had talked about this was something to keep an eye on, Pickens, whether or not he'd still be around. Well, obviously, he's no longer around. I had the opportunity to talk to RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys a couple of weeks ago from the Dallas perspective. Now I would like your perspective. Let's start, first of all, the Steelers side of things. Was this inevitable? Was this something that when exactly do you think that there might have been the breaking point? Was there a breaking point, or was it just a culmination of things?
I think culmination is the right word, Greg. I think Pittsburgh was truly done with George Pickens, and they've been down this road before. The fate of every difficult, at times malcontent receiver in recent years have ended in trade, be it Chase Claypool, Antonio Brown, Deontay Johnson, et cetera, Martavis Bryant. And so this is not a shocking outcome. The timing was a bit curious post-draft, and then have to fill that hole this late into the offseason. But, for all the Pickens talent, there was so much headache, so much frustration, late to games, reportedly multiple times, including the Christmas Day game. That's just stuff that is hard to allow to slip by, even as talented as George Pickens is. And there's a cultural reset I think Pittsburgh is trying to undergo to some extent in that locker room right now. So, I mean, Pickett, once the Metcalf trade happened, despite that, Pickens was not going to get re-signed. He was not going to come back on a long-term deal. They were not going to pay him that kind of money if he was going to do those types of things professionally and not be the professional he needed to be. And so he was going to either leave after 2025, and Pittsburgh would hope to get a comp pick for 2027, or Pittsburgh could trade him now and guarantee that pick for 2026, and they chose the latter.
Okay, so when did the fans start to get this bad feeling about Pickens? Like, was it right off the jump? Like, well, we knew what kind of player he was, but we just never really saw it escalate. Or is this something that just happened last season?
You're asking in terms of the lack of professionalism,
yes,
and the antics
attitude
and that type of stuff.
Yes.
I mean, it had always come up really throughout his Steelers tenure, probably more so the past 2 years. Kind of the real first, maybe not the first, but the biggest story was that Colts game in 2023 where Pickens didn't block on the goal line and then made some bad excuses to the press about it afterwards, to the point where Mike Tomlin had to hold a rare Thursday press conference to try to clarify things. That was kind of the first, it was a media story for about a week. And so that's when things really kind of blew up nationally. But this has been something with Pickens for a while. Some people say it's why he dropped in the draft, and maybe it was a component, but he had a torn ACL last year at Georgia.
Yes.
Caught 5 passes. That was the reason why I think he primarily fell to the second round, just because of the injury. But yeah, this thing had been on and off. Anytime Pittsburgh had lost, something Pickens became a story. Sometimes it was justified, sometimes it was more media created, but there's certainly validity to the issues that George Pickens had. If you're late for games, this dude racked up so many fines too. I mean, 2023 racked up reportedly over $200,000 in fines from NFL and team combined, over about probably $100K from the NFL this past year. So just a lot of stuff going on with George Pickens, and Pittsburgh reached a breaking point and they move on.
Okay, and then as far as the receiving room, again, I mentioned Metcalf. Based on the offense that they run with Arthur Smith, it's not like they really have to worry too much about a deep wide receiver core. That's just not his thing. So do you think that they're okay, or are they kind of down a man that they really need to find that really good number 2?
You're right. The Arthur Smith offense is primarily multiple tight end based. They don't use 11 personnel at nearly the rate they used to, or the NFL average, but you still need that starter receiver opposite. This feels very reminiscent to last year when George Pickens was your number 1, and the question was, who's your number 2 opposite after trading Deontay Johnson to the Carolina Panthers, and Pittsburgh never found that guy throughout the season. The offense felt incomplete. Teams could roll coverage for George Pickens, take him away. There was nobody else to adequately take advantage of those one-on-one opportunities. And then when Pickens got hurt late in the season, missed 3 games, the passing offense really tanked. And so you're in a similar situation this year. Now the team and Omar Khan, the general manager, said they're confident in what they have internally. Calvin Austin, to his credit, broke out last year. Roman Wilson, second season, bunch of injuries rookie year, played all of 5 offensive snaps. So really a clean slate, a lot of unknown with him. They signed Robert Woods, a trusty veteran. You have Metcalf as your new number 1. So we'll see. I imagine the team will go through spring work, OTAs, minicamp, see what they have, and then potentially explore outside options if they don't like what they've seen from the current group. But yeah, big time question. I think Pittsburgh has not earned the benefit of the doubt to trust them in the internal receivers because of what happened last year, where the offense felt at least one piece short at receiver.
Yeah, as a Michigan fan, I know Roman Wilson really well. And if the injury is behind him, I don't think there's any doubt that he is going to be an effective football player at this level. What kind of a player is he going to be? How effective? We'll see. I know he doesn't have the biggest size, but I think he's a player. I really do. And he's stepped up in big games, championship player. So I think he's a step up actually over Calvin Austin. Even though, like you said, Calvin Austin has showed that last year that maybe he is a player that can be counted on in some capacity. He's got a little playmaker in him. So I think this could be okay. It's just a matter of players stepping up. That's what it's about. You got to get players to step up in your system who you drafted, and we'll see if they can get that done. And we'll talk more about that when training camp comes around.
Just one really quick note, if I could just add on that. I agree that potentially could happen, but you just don't know. It's hard to be super confident. And then if Rodgers does sign, his track record with young receivers is typically not great because he wants guys to be detailed and buttoned up, and rookies and young guys like Wilson, a de facto rookie, typically don't produce. I think about Corley last year with the Jets, who had 3 catches, I think, as a rookie. So that's an additional concern for me if Rodgers does sign. And
I should ask then, again, as a Jet fan, boo, I'm weak. We're weak. But would that be like a definite move to go ahead and make a trade to get Alan Lazard? Because Jet fans want Alan Lazard out of New York as fast as possible. He just did not work out there. But you saw even at the end of last year when things started going better for Aaron Rodgers, Lazard started to make some plays and it looked like the old Lazard. So is that even possible?
It is. Again, I think Pittsburgh will start internally. They're not going to rush out to make a move. They're going to watch Wilson and Austin, et cetera, through OTAs. But if they don't like what they see, it's easy to connect those dots if Rodgers does sign. And I make the comparison. I'm not a big movie guy, but it feels like every Adam Sandler movie, wherever Aaron Rodgers goes, it's like, here's Rob Schneider and here's Kevin James. They just follow each other wherever Sandler ends up starring. And so it certainly would make sense for Lazard to come to Pittsburgh. Or his 3 friends that he grew up with that are always in his movies and you have no idea who they are. But because they're hooked up with Adam Sandler, they're all they play pivotal roles in all of Adam Sandler's movies. Exactly. So, yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the draft. And let's start, first of all, with the top pick. And let's go ahead and talk defense now. A lot of offense so far. So let's swing on over to Derek Harmon. And a lot of people thought that Derek Harmon could have been, maybe an outside top 10 pick, top 15 type of guy, but there were some injury concerns, and that definitely moved him down several spots, which is potentially a big benefit to the Steelers. It is a classic Steelers pick, and a focus, broadly speaking, Greg, of the draft was defensive line, front 7, get stronger, more physical, better against the run, younger overall. When Baltimore runs for 299 on you in a playoff game, you're going to focus on stopping the run. And so Harmon was needed for a defensive line that was aging. Cam Hayward, great as he is, just turned 36 today, I believe. And so there's got to be an heir to that. Harmon is that classic Steelers 3-4 defensive end. They're comfortable with the injury history and the concerns over the shoulder. He's downplayed them. He said there's no concern. He was healthy in college. I don't know what the medical is, if it's a more longstanding issue. He went through rookie minicamp. This is a Steelers team that has been comfortable with taking some quote-unquote injury risks. Troy Fautanu had whispers about his knee last year. That's why he fell a little bit. Darnell Washington, Peyton Wilson, Corey Trice Jr., all guys with some medical background history the team drafted, and so far things have generally worked out in their favor, although Fautanu had some freak knee injuries last year. But on Harmon, yeah, I think Harmon can be an elite run defender and a very good pass rusher. He's 21. He broke out last year. His best football is ahead of him. He played in a similar system in Oregon in an odd front that asked him to twist and stunt and play up and down the line, very similar to what he'll do in Pittsburgh. So easy projection as these things go. Good player, best football ahead of him, fit a need. Makes a lot of sense. It's a good pick.
Yeah, he has the tool set to be a 3-down, a very effective NFL interior defender. And yeah, I agree with you. His best football is ahead of him. Pittsburgh has themselves a really good one. Let's stay on the defensive line because, as you said, this was a big spot for him. Wyatt Black was available late. They decided to take him around 5. And it's interesting because right after the season ended, there was talk that this is about where Black could go, maybe even 4th roundish. And then he didn't perform very well during the All-Star game, tune-ups, the poking and the prodding and all that kind of stuff. And then some people wondered whether or not he'd even get drafted at all. But lo and behold, apparently, from what I understand, there were several teams that were interested in him, maybe around the 6th round. But the Steelers decided, well, we want him, so we'll take him in round 5.
Yeah, again, that mission of adding good competition along the defensive line, top to bottom. Black won't start, but could he compete for a depth spot, rotational role? Absolutely. He's a guy that at his best has some really impressive run defensive snaps. I mean, he can be a space eater that can 2-gap, occupy blocks, and was a good tackler last year. The question is about consistency with the run, staying on his feet. It's interesting. You guys have him listed as a nose tackle, and I think it's his best spot. He's 330 pounds, but Pittsburgh has said they view him more as a defensive end. They called him a 4-tech, and so I'm concerned if they play him out closer to tackle, some of the athleticism concerns, balance concerns will be on display. So I think in terms of where he lines up is going to be really important for his growth, development, and overall effectiveness. They did release Montravius Adams right after the draft. That would kind of indicate, okay, maybe Black will see some more nose tackle time. So I really want to see where he plays, because he's a 2-down run defender. He's not a pass rusher. That's not his game. And so he's got to be good against the run. And there are some inconsistencies there playing the run.
And it does still look like, even though they added 2 rookies, they really did. There wasn't any earth shattering. They got the Patriot kid, but you could tell Hayward, like you said, is almost time is up. There needs to be an infusion of even more youth and depth because an injury here or there, and that's not a good situation. Do you think they might add again? I know there's not many players left, but there are a few along the defensive line. Do you think they might add?
I think it's pretty full right now. I think, again, like receiver, Pittsburgh will want to view what they have internally, and then maybe you have a post cut down in August add if you're not happy with the group. It's really about development. Keanu Benton, a 30-year big year for Keanu Benton. The talent there is a really athletic player, but can he play better against the run? Can he translate those pressures in the sacks? He has 2 sacks in 2 seasons. That's not the say-all, end-all, because he can get after the quarterback. He's a good pass rusher, but can you finish some of those plays? Harmon himself was a guy that didn't finish plays in college. It was one of his biggest drawbacks. And so can those guys step up? Can a Logan Lee in his 2nd year, can he make some plays? He was hurt. He missed all of his rookie season. So I think it's really about those young guys stepping up, because you're right. If they don't, this D-line will still not feel complete. Aquale on screen right now is a good run defender, base left defensive end, but he's 1-year guy production really in his long NFL career. And he's not a big upside guy either. And so you got to get some guys who can rush the passer, play in sub package. That's what Benton has to do more of, and Harmon has to prove as well.
Once you get past the first two teams there, you take a look at the 2 deep and you go even further. Are there any players we need to keep an eye on? I know Leal has it just hasn't happened so far. Lee was a pick last year. Lowry's been around, and then you got a bunch of other guys. Is there anyone there? Like, if you got to pick just one guy that might be able, or somebody that you think, hey, I'm going to keep an eye on him because I think there's hope that he could develop and maybe contribute this year.
It's hard to point to one name. Lee's a guy that They liked in the 6th round last year. He got stuck at nose tackle during the summer because of injury, and that's not his spot to play 3-4 nose tackle. I want to see him maybe play some more defensive end and Black play nose tackle. Liao, the light came on a little bit last year. Then he had a neck injury, I think week 4 against Dallas, and it's just he was a tweener. Pittsburgh never found out what to do with. It really seems like a tough path for Liao going forward. Oto Mewa from Jacksonville has a cup of coffee of NFL experience. It's a real grab bag, though. So I think it really comes down to Harmon and Benton developing and being the guys they were drafted to be.
Let's stay on defense because there's some more to talk about here. And I want to go to Jack Sawyer. And again, as a Michigan fan, I was able to admire and respect what he did. He comes up with a huge play in the Ohio State-Michigan game. Could have been the game-winning play, the game-deciding play. This didn't turn out that way. Ohio State was not able to march down the field and score and win the game. Then they get to the postseason, and he continues to just make play after play after play in big spots. And that's just the type of player he is. He may not have all the measurables you're looking for, but he's good against the run. He can do a little bit against the pass. But, he just seems to be a Pittsburgh Steeler type of draft pick.
It's a perfect way to describe that, Greg. He feels like a Pittsburgh Steeler. And I talked earlier about the projections. When you drafting is so much art, not science, no one can guarantee anything. But I think you create a higher hit rate when you have a cleaner projection of, okay, this guy did this in college in this system. He's going to do the same thing in our system. We have a better and cleaner evaluation of him. And what Jack Sawyer did at Ohio State under Jim Knowles is going to be very similar to what he'll do in Pittsburgh. Stand on his feet, loop, stunt, set the edge against the run, be a no-nonsense pass rusher. In Pittsburgh, just like the productivity, you're right. The measurables aren't there. I don't see high upside with him. Probably number 3 rotational guy. He can't bend the edge. He's a little tight-hipped, but he's a guy that knows how to rush the passer. And as you said, super dominant in that playoff run last year. 4.5 sacks in the postseason in that national title run. The strip sack, fumble return, touchdown against Texas was obviously a crazy critical play. And so he profiles as a Pittsburgh Steeler, no nonsense kind of a guy, hearts and smarts. And so do I see him being the next great Steelers outside linebacker? Probably not. But the next good Steelers outside linebacker, that's Jack Sawyer.
I like that. Hearts and smarts.
That's an old Kevin Colbert phrase that they drafted by for a long time and is carried over to Omar Khan and Andy Weidel.
Awesome. Okay, let's stick with the linebacker room because Carson Bruner was selected in round 7. And I thought that was a really good spot to get Bruner because he's actually one of the more underrated, better cover linebackers in the draft. And another thing I thought interesting, by the way, is that the Steelers went, and I don't know if this was like if either you used it or other writers used it, but the fact that they had 6 of their 7 picks were all in the Big Ten. All play in the Big Ten this year, which I thought was kind of interesting. But maybe that just shows you most Pittsburgh Steeler talent, the type of guys they want, they do play Big Ten football. So maybe not that big of a surprise, even though Bruner only did it for 1 year. But back to Bruner, very good coverage linebacker.
Yeah, and I also say the Big Ten now has 74 schools in it. So just feel like these power conferences, there's only so many conferences to go from. But point taken, you're right. It does profile. They want guys who are kind of the tough mutters, and they've been there, done that. SEC, Big Ten, those are the pools Pittsburgh usually drafts from. I call Carson Bruner pre-draft even the free space on the Steelers mock draft bingo card because the dots were, again, easy to connect. Pittsburgh loves their bloodlines. Mark Bruner, his father, drafted by the Steelers, is a scout for the Steelers. He's the West Area scout. He scouted Carson Bruner. Actually, they were watching. Mark Bruner was at home with his son. He wasn't even at the team facility. He watched the draft together. And the story apparently went that Carson got drafted in the same house, in the same spot where Mark was drafted by Pittsburgh 30 some odd years ago. So it does become full circle there. Inside linebacker, not a big need, but 7th round, of course, you're not drafting for need. As you said, Bruner, really productive. Is 1 full year starting at Washington, 100+ tackles, 3 interceptions last year, team captain. I think his path, like any 7th rounder, is special teams. And that's his background. Before starting this past year, he was a dominant special teams guy, 4-5 face type of player. He'll compete with Mark Robinson for a spot. So 7th round, good testing, ran 4.58 at the combine, good profile. I think he can stack and shed, get off blocks, and has all the hearts and smarts. And Pittsburgh knows Carson Bruner as well as anyone knows Carson Bruner because of his dad.
And then this linebacker room, before we move on to the secondary and their other 7th-round pick, is really got to be considered 3-4 wise one of the best in the NFL after the addition, who we talked about last year, Peyton Wilson. Big fan of Peyton Wilson's. Not a surprise again that he was with the Steelers and that they took him. Smart to add this kid to the Steeler room. One of my favorite picks last year. And obviously to team up with Queen and Watt and Highsmith. And now you've got some interesting young kids backing them up. Like I said, especially if they can stay healthy, that's the looks of it could be the best 3-4 linebacker room in the NFL. So
it's a strong room. The D-line has to play well to keep guys like Queen and Wilson clean, because they're a little more run and hit. They're not guys that are super great stack and shed, true old school backers, but they're super talented guys. And Wilson, I thought, had a good rookie year, has to be a little better against the run. They had him at just kind of nickel packages. Will they expand his role this year? We'll see. If not, Malik Harrison will kind of play the Landon Roberts role as that rundown 3-4 base linebacker. But yeah, it's a good room overall. The edge depth is super critical too. I thought in those final Colbert years, the edge depth was a little weak. When TJ Watt went down in, 2022, didn't have a lot behind him. I think Omar Khan has wisely drafted Nick Herbig, drafted Jack Sawyer to really be strong there top to bottom, because those guys have not always been healthy. Watt's had injury issues. Highsmith, Herbig last year too, got Pittsburgh in a tight spot. So you better be strong at outside linebacker. Pittsburgh is, and they're good at inside linebacker too.
Secondary, Dante Kent went in round 7. Talk a little bit about the interest in this pick. Because he wasn't really rated highly or anything like that, even here at Ourlad. So what is it they liked about Kent?
Yeah, this was a guy, I'll be honest, I was not really familiar with when they made the pick. This one really came out of left field as that final and 7th, overall selection for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They liked his versatility. He's played nickel the past 2 years. He then played outside corner at Central Michigan. So they like that inside-outside element. He's an aggressive tackler. Actually, I did a study post-draft. Of all the corners drafted in this year's class, no cornerback had more tackles in college than Dante Kent. I think it was 289 or so. He was ahead of Jahdae Barron. So doesn't always mean that you're a great corner because you tackle a lot, but he played in the nickel, he played the run, and so it wasn't just because he was getting burned, although he does profile more of a feast famine corner. Made a lot of big plays, gave up a lot of big plays. Notre Dame game, for example, he got burned a couple of times. So his path will be special teams. There's some punt return value with him as well, although I don't know what the role is going to be. Pittsburgh and Tomlin typically do not allow defensive players to do return type work, but that is part of his resume. So gunner, you have to probably earn that job as a gunner, special teamer. That'll be his path to sticking around.
We talked about this as a need a couple months ago, that nickel corner. They add Eccles, again, draft Kent. And then they also picked up Sebastian Castro after the draft, which is really amazing because it's very, very rare that we see a guy that is considered as high as maybe even a 2nd-round grade by our lads to not even get drafted. I mean, if Castro would have been taken, say, with that 4th-round pick or even in the 7th round, okay, but that's just an extra bonus. And I understand that, matter of fact, John Cooper from Ourlads, our top scout, did talk about, you do see a little bit more film on him after the season. There are some warts there. You get it. There was a specific role that Iowa had him in that maybe disguised some of those warts. But still, I mean, this wasn't even a draft pick.
It was surprising. And I will just say overall, Pittsburgh's undrafted class is really good. And typically it's not. They pinch pennies to one of the cheapest teams with UDFAs. I think one reason why you saw some guys fall, because of all the guys that stayed for another year because of COVID. Dan Colbert, who works in the Steelers front office, said they had graded last year 600 guys who went back to school for their 2024 season and were now part of the 2025 class. And so 7th-round picks become undrafted free agents become tryout guys. You kind of have that domino effect there because of all that extra year of eligibility for COVID. But yeah, Castro's a really good find. He's versatile. He's hair on fire type of a dude. I mean, I get why he fell out of the draft. He's undersized. He didn't test well. Not a great combination, but this is a guy that could carve out a role. He's going to certainly give it his all. Could he have a role as a dime defender, ace special teamer potentially? So I'm really excited to watch this guy come training camp.
Are you satisfied with what the Steelers did this offseason in the secondary?
Yeah, I would say so. It's a little more short-term band-aid than it is long-term solution. They've had this Rolodex of veteran corners they've signed, from Levi Wallace to Patrick Peterson to Dante Jackson in a trade to now Darius Slay. You have to eventually find and draft high someone
Yeah.
opposite Joey Porter Jr. again, but Slay's a veteran. I think he can still play, and so I understand that. At safety, they had Juan Thornhill, not my favorite pick, but safety was getting pretty thin when they did go sign somebody. It's really about just getting some guys to kind of play to their level. Mika Fitzpatrick, making sure Slay doesn't fall off a cliff. Porter taking another step in year number 3, cutting down on penalties. Corey Trice Jr., can he stay healthy? He's a guy that could have been drafted, I think, third, fourth round. That kind of talent. The injury history is just what pushed him down to the 7th round 2 years ago when he struggled to stay healthy in the NFL. So, I think nickel corner is not great. Pittsburgh has really done a poor job addressing that overall since losing Mike Hilton, but it is a better spot this year than past years, with Bishop coming back in his second year. Eccles, as you mentioned, the draft pick, and Dante Kent. So Pittsburgh will bank on getting back to stopping the run, letting the pass rush eat. That'll help ease the pressure off the secondary. I think overall, short term, it's fine. Long term, still some questions.
Any chance, because I'm sure this has been talked about, any chance that Mike Hilton returns?
It doesn't look likely. I don't want to rule anything out. I would certainly understand it. He did a great job in Pittsburgh his first stint, but he wasn't a great coverage guy even in Pittsburgh initially. And now he's 30 or so. The coverage skills diminished more. I think they're going to, again, roll with what they have with Bishop and company.
Let's go to the offense, where there was a couple of picks, and these were both 2 really important picks. Start first of all with Caleb Johnson at running back in round 3. And yeah, Johnson, when you look at him, especially the way he broke out this year, you said, oh, this is a 3-down number 1 back. I mean, the legs just keep churning, physical. Again, a Pittsburgh back. This makes all the sense in the world.
Similar to Harmon, 21 years old, breakout year in 2024, a cleaner projection coming from the Iowa more pro style system, ran a bunch of outside zone, which is what Arthur Smith wants to do, didn't get to do a ton of last year. This is a back that's more in his vision of the style of offense he wants to run. Thought this was strong value. Wouldn't surprise me if Johnson was a top 50 guy and he falls to 83. And so to me, Greg, I view this as kind of a blend of new school and old school. Pittsburgh still loves their backs to be big. They love to draft the 220 plus pound, 6-foot type of runner from the Big Ten. But Johnson's a guy that can hopefully add more explosiveness. Is not maybe the plotter and the true bruiser that Najee Harris was. Johnson's got light feet. He had a good run rate of 20 plus yards at Iowa. He can kind of get that speed going downhill. He plays faster than his 4.57 40 time. Maybe not the most dynamic back, obviously, but I think they're trying to thread that needle between still kind of adhering to their principles of big guys, but hopefully somebody that can create some more big runs, because Pittsburgh does not do enough of that. Since 2021, they have 1 run of 40 plus yards. That is last in the NFL. They got to get some more potency, explosiveness in the run game. Hopefully Johnson can do that.
So for fantasy fans out there, and they're deciding about what to do here, because it's very possible that both of these guys are going to split a lot of the work, similar to what we saw with Harris, even though Harris had a little bit more than Warren. Do you think that's going to remain the same, or maybe it'll flip where Warren will have a little bit more in year 1 than Johnson?
I think they'll have to feel it out. Warren will enter the year as the starter. Johnson will have to earn that role, but there's going to be a committee approach, and Johnson will do his best work in early down. He's got to work on pass pro, wasn't a prolific receiver. That's what Warren can do. That's what Gainwell is able to do. And so I would assume Johnson's going to have more early down work. So the non-PPR leagues for Fantasy Hat will probably be a little more attractive with Caleb Johnson. It is Arthur Smith, and hell hath no fury like a fantasy owner who owns an Arthur Smith running back, because you never quite know. You're going to get 20 carries, going to get 3 carries. It can be on the hot hand a little bit from time to time, but I think there'll be a pretty even split between those 2 guys. We'll kind of see from there, but Johnson will certainly have an immediate role on first and second down.
And he'll probably be the primary goal line guy, need a first down guy, you think?
I mean, Warren's got some power. He's a little fire hydrant, so it'll probably vary. It's probably too tough to say that definitively, but certainly Johnson will get some chances as well. Okay,
so now we have to talk about, we kind of opened with the quarterback situation, the veteran quarterback situation, and now we're towards the quarterback rookie situation. And I was one of those fans that, because there were a lot of them, a lot of Will Howard fans, meaning they grew to become a fan after what they saw in the playoffs. And I mean, I've obviously followed Will Howard since his K-State days. Big season at K-State before he left, beats an undefeated TCU team, wins his conference championship, and goes to Ohio State. And the thing is, the ironic thing is, in a positive way, is if this was the old college football playoff format, well, we don't get to see Will Howard at his best in the playoffs because they're done. They lose. And that was not a great game against Michigan. And that's not the way he wanted him to end his career. But it's a new year, more teams, gets to the playoffs, and just plays tremendously. So there's no doubt consistency is the name of the game with Will Howard. But 6th round, I mean, how fortunate can the Steelers be to get Will Howard in round 6, who I believe, even if Aaron Rodgers is here for 1 year, I don't think there's any doubt. I think Will Howard will be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2026. And I also got to believe a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers fans were just ecstatic to be able to get a kid like this in round 6.
You're right. There was a ton of excitement, and I was excited too. Me personally, pre-draft, before I even had an inkling he'd become a Steeler, I had a 2nd-round grade on Will Howard. He was my number 3 quarterback in this year's class. There are starter traits with him. And so to get him in the 6th round, you are seeing teams fall into 1 or 2 camps at quarterback. Either take one early, or we're going to wait until very late to take one. We're not going to do this 4th round. Do we really like him or not? Is he a franchise guy or not kind of dance? And, generally you saw quarterbacks go lower this year than projected. Jalen Milroe went 3rd round, and everyone knows Shadur Sanders fall, and Will Howard goes later than projected. Same with Kyle McCord. Quinn Ewers, late 7th round selection. So that's kind of the trend line on quarterbacks. But I like Will Howard. He's more athletic than people give him credit for. But what I like the most from him is he can make plays from within the pocket. And I know how sexy it is about the athletic scramble types who can extend plays, and that's important. But still, 80% of your throws are coming from within the pocket in structure. And Howard can do that with touch and layering. There were some bumps in the road, as you mentioned, the Michigan game, the first Oregon game, that slide at the end, just a big gaffe there. But I look at it and think of it this way, Greg. That was his first year at Ohio State. You're transferring in, new system. There's going to be some bumps in the road trying to pick that up on the fly while trying to assert yourself as a leader and the pressure of being the Ohio State starting quarterback. And you saw by year's end him really embrace that. A lot of mental toughness with this guy from his high school days to K-State, battling for the job there, and then the adversity they faced at Ohio State. So I wouldn't be as strong with you to say this will be the 2026 starter. I think Pittsburgh will be looking for a 1st-round quarterback next year, but I'm really excited, optimistic to see what Howard can do in the preseason this summer for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, because if he does impress them enough this season without even playing a regular season game, then maybe they don't go around, say, mortgaging themselves for a 1st-round draft pick, because there are going to be some other teams that are going to be doing that as well, including the Cleveland Browns. They're setting themselves up with that additional 1st-round draft pick just for that. They want to get one of those 1st-round graded kids. And right now, I believe there's really only a couple of guys that I know Arledge likes, Nussmeier and Alar. I'm a big Alar guy, though. Arledge has him down to like the 20s as far as overall prospects right now. Honestly, I think he might actually be top 5, and he could actually end at the top pick overall in the draft if he just has the type of season this season, the way he improved from 2023 to 2024. He does that again in 2024 to 2025. I think he'll be the top pick of the draft. So not what Steeler fans probably want to hear, but hey, you got Will Howard, and I think that's all you'll need anyway. So.
Hey, that'd be great. I think the concern is, as you said, unless there's a bunch of injuries, he's not going to play a regular season snap. And so you're going to base things off just a preseason action. And there's certainly nothing you can guarantee for next year's draft. You can never, you never know who's going to play well. This time of year ago, is Carson Beck's going to be the guy in 2025? That obviously did not happen. And there's always someone who emerges from nowhere. No one talked about Jackson Dart. Heck, even Cam Ward was really not viewed as the consensus number 1 quarterback this time a year ago. I think back to Joe Burrow, his last year at LSU came out of nowhere. So you never know what could happen. We'll see. But I think Pittsburgh will still be very strongly looking at quarterback in the 1st round of next year's draft.
Okay, so we have, since I have you, we've talked about just about every position based on the player talent here. So let's just conclude with 2 more. The tight end position, because they did add J.J. Galbraith as far as a UDFA. And you think Galbraith has a chance to kind of hang on?
I like his game. It might be a tougher path with Freiermuth and Washington entrenched. They signed Parham, who's had some time with the Chargers and made some plays, a big body type. But I thought Galbraith was one of those those FCS tight ends, they just seem to be a factory. No one talks about the FCS with Tucker Kraft, and I'm losing some names on some of those FCS guys to come out recently, but there's been several of them. And Galbraith is a guy that is one of those kind of new age move tight ends. He's a little more receiver than he is tight end, but he can block. There's effort there, and he was productive. He had a shoulder injury in 2024, missed 4 games, but still put up good numbers. He's a smooth route runner, good tracking, productive guy. They had a new OC change at South Dakota, and they got kind of him to fit better into that offense. So it may be practice squad to start, but I just like the allure of what he can do as a receiver, and there's effort as a blocker too.
And by the way, the Eagles have one of those.
Dallas Goedert. Yeah,
that was a few years back. I remember that because I interviewed him here on the R-Lads Network the year he came out. So
nice.
All right. Anyway, offensive line. So let's conclude with that. It's the only position we have not talked about. Do you think they're ready, set, they're happy?
I wish I had that crystal ball, Greg. I mean, it's set in terms of the 5 is going to be the 5, as you guys see on screen. Jones, Sayamalu, Frazier, McCormick, Fautanu. Those are starting 5. How well they play is the $1 million question. And to me, Greg, as much fanfare as there is about quarterback and Rodgers and everything else, the big litmus test of success that should define Pittsburgh in 2025 is how well does this offensive line develop. They must become a really strong unit. They've invested so much into this offensive line. 1st-round picks in Jones and Fautanu, 2nd-round pick in Frazier, 4th-round pick in McCormick, young guys that have to really play to their talent. Now, Frazier was great last year. You expect that to continue. Jones is in a make-or-break year 3. He's going to move back to left tackle, replacing Dan Moore, who went to Tennessee. Jones has the talent, has to focus, has to lock in, has to stay healthy. It's a big, big year for Broderick Jones. No Steeler under more pressure than Broderick Jones this year. McCormick, 2nd-year guy, showed flashes as a rookie, had to flip from left guard where he played at South Dakota State to right guard, handled that pretty well. Still ways to go technically as a run blocker and pass blocker. For Fautanu, the team is really high on, but barely played last year. Had 1 start, hurt his knee, dislocated his kneecap, out for the season. So it's kind of a clean slate with Fautanu. And so Pittsburgh has to get these guys to hit. If not, they have to redo the investments on the O-line. They can't afford that with other areas of need. So it's a big spotlight on this offensive line, no question.
So the depth is a big concern.
Yeah, the depth is not looking nearly as strong as last year. And it was tested last year because they had a bunch of injuries to start the year with, say, Amalu and Fautanu going down, and Frazier missed a couple of games. So McCollum, is probably good enough as a backup center. The tackles are really scary looking with Calvin Anderson. He's a veteran swing guy, but you want him starting long-term. You don't. Dylan Cook did not take a step forward last year. I do look at someone like Aiden Williams, the undrafted free agent from Minnesota Duluth. He was a tackle there, probably kicks inside the guard for Pittsburgh. Could he carve out a spot? But yeah, depth right now is looking awfully shaky.
A couple of quick things before I let you go. Just want to remind everybody that the R-Lads draft review guide, this is last year's, is coming out in late June. So these discussions are really good for us because we have 32 team draft profiles where we break down every pick, also free agency, undrafted free agents, give grades. So all here in the draft review guide you can get. We'll have a link in the description how you can pick one of those up. And also don't forget that we are broadcasting as well on the Proline TV YouTube channel. A nice little marketing partner of our lads. So if you're interested in all sorts of sports, including NFL, college football, and much more, check us out here on Proline TV. I've got to ask you finally about the rest of the UDFAs and special teams because I think Rock Taylor is the only other guy that I can see here. Not a big list, even though you mentioned fullback, which I'm sure you're going to bring up now. But Rock Taylor is a player that actually impressed me a little bit because I was really high on Seth Hennigan as a late-round quarterback with all of his experience. I think he's going to be a really nice number 2 quarterback in the NFL, maybe more, who knows. But Rock Taylor was his number 1 receiver the last couple of years, made a lot of big plays and a lot of big games. He's doesn't have all the measurables, which is why he wasn't drafted, but still a guy that tough kid. And I think he in this room, I could actually see him making the team, believe it or not. But what about you? Any of these other UDFAs that are intriguing?
Yeah, on Rock Taylor, I thought he could have been drafted. He's got size, he's got production, about 1,000 yards each of his last 2 years at Memphis. As you said, for those Tigers teams, all they did was win. He ran 4.49 at the combine. So there's a good profile. Pre-Pickens trade, I would have said really tough to make the 53. He had so many names spoken for with Woods, Skowronek, a special teamer, Wilson, Austin, Metcalf. Post-Pickens trade, there could be a spot there. So, could he catch on as number 5, number 6? We'll see. He'll have to earn it, but that's one of the more intriguing UDFAs, no question about that. I mentioned Aiden Williams, and yeah, you set me up for the fullback talk. DJ Thomas Jones from South Alabama. Pittsburgh appears to have given him the highest signing bonus of any UDFA they signed, about $30,000 for him. He's a guy that was more H-back at South Alabama, was a big-time recruit from Ole Miss, transferred to South Alabama to be closer to home. But he's a guy that's a really powerful lead blocker and a little bit of receiving ability too. You gotta hunt for the big plays as a receiver. Wasn't primarily used there at South Alabama, but there's some vertical downfield plays on tape from DJ Thomas Jones. Arthur Smith loves a fullback. This team does not have one. Hayward listed there, not really a true fullback. And so, got to work on special teams too. That's Hayward's claim to fame to making this roster. But I think Thomas Jones will push for a roster spot.
Interesting. So what is Hayward's primary role?
It's kind of whatever Pittsburgh needs him to be. It's really just true H-back. I mean, he's really a special teamer. That's been his game, covering kicks and punts. I mean, he was used as a receiver 2 years ago, but under Arthur Smith last year, caught just 4 passes. He's like an off-ball on split zone plays, so he'll cut a defensive end, but it's not a great fit in this system. So could that be a guy that's fighting for a job in his spot this summer? I think he'll be facing competition from guys like DJ Thomas Jones.
Yeah, absolutely. And special teams, I do have to ask you as we close out the acquisition after the draft for Ben Sauls, local Pittsburgh kid, definitely one of the more intriguing kickers to come out. And yet Chris Boswell has been a steady veteran presence. And that's important. That is not easy to pass on. So especially Boswell's ability to kick it even longer the later in his career he's gone. So it's just one of those situations where, okay, he's a young local kid, so this is where he'll try out, and maybe he'll stick on our practice squad. And if something happens to Boswell, maybe we'll turn to Sauls. But if another team comes calling, then okay, they'll sign him and he'll go elsewhere.
I think you read that well. I was frankly surprised to see Saul sign just because I thought he would go somewhere with a better chance to win a starting job because he was one of college football's best kickers last year. He really improved from 50-plus yards. He was 6-7 on 50-plus and is made from 57 from 58. So he really had a strong season for the Panthers last year. There really is no path to unseat Chris Boswell. But if I was him, Boswell will probably get more rest this preseason. He's well into his 30s. They need to save that leg, and so Sauls will have more of an opportunity. He's a lefty kicker, which you don't see too often. So I appreciate kind of the quirkiness of Ben Sauls, but I will just kind of give him one story. Pittsburgh in 2019 signed a kicker named Matthew Wright, who had no chance to beat up Chris Boswell, but he stuck. He came back to Pittsburgh when Boswell got hurt. He kicked for Jacksonville for a season, still in the NFL. So it may not be Ben Sauls as a Steeler, but as you said, showing tape for other teams around the NFL, I think Ben Sauls can stick.
And are there any other, I know you mentioned a couple of injuries. Are there any injuries that really the team is monitoring that they may not have this player for half the season or to start the season? And anybody like that?
No one in particular. Cole Holcomb had that devastating knee injury in 2023. He missed all of last year, came back to practice very late in the season, IR to return, but never activated. He should be good for OTAs. We will have to see exactly where Fautanu is at. He should be good and cleared for OTAs, but I don't want to guarantee that. So we'll be watching to make sure that he is fully cleared after that September dislocated kneecap last year, and that should be the bulk of the list. There was a draft pick last year, Ryan Watts, who's super unfortunate. Literally the last play of the preseason suffered a severe neck injury, and he's medically retired. This happened right after the draft because they just could not get cleared for that. So no one you're anticipating that decision's been made on him, but that is one injury note for unfortunate for Ryan Watts. He had a promising training camp last year. His career, unfortunately, is no more.
Alex, great as always. Really appreciate your time. Let the Steelers fans who don't know about you know exactly where they can find you and how often, as far as coverage, podcasts, things of that nature.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Check out the site, SteelersDepot.com. Follow us on Twitter at SteelersDepot. And a training camp a couple months from now, but we'll be out there every single practice training camp. We have daily notes. We do play-by-play of every single play during training camp. We've done that for a decade. And so it's a big nerd city out there at St. Vincent College, but be a lot of fun. And so looking forward to that. And thank you again, Greg.
Oh, you got it, Alex. And looking forward to talking to you right around training camp preseason when we get a kind of final look at the Steelers as they enter the 2025 season, which could be very interesting. And I'm sure the next time we talk, there might be another quarterback on the roster under center, taking snaps, throwing passes. So we'll look forward to talking to you at some point regarding that, if and when that happens. And again, I want to remind all the viewers out there, either live or on demand, to check us out here all off season, and then definitely when we return for the preseason to talk to Alex and others about the upcoming season. So again, Alex, thanks for doing this, and we look forward to talking to you next time.